Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 18th of November 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth and the sun's out.
Extraordinary. The sun is out and I've got to say that people are still complaining because quite a few people saying it's cold. Well, it's sunny. Cheer up.
Exactly.
That's it. Weather report.
Yep, done. Go on then.
Well, let's start off with President Obama, who's been speaking out in the UN, and his message really has to be seen to be believed. The only thing ISIS killers understand is force. And you should hear this man with his jutting finger there talking on the video. If you go on the Mail site, you can have a look at this. But he's saying that basically, yes, we could get American troops in on the ground if the terrorists get hold of a nuclear weapon. So here we've got the classic scenario of ramping up the fear. We haven't achieved it with chemical weapons and gas attacks. Now we've got to bring in the idea, well, of course, these terrorists, we still don't know who these people are or where they've really come from. But these disparate terrorists are so well organised that they're capable of now acquiring a nuclear weapon, and they could possibly be going to unleash this weapon in the Middle East. So what are they going to get hold of? Are they going to get hold of some form of old Soviet Union nuclear missiles? Is that where it's going to come? This is going to be Putin's fault that these people have got hold of a nuclear weapon? Or are they going to have us believe that these people have built a nuclear weapon in their kitchens, probably using a pressure cooker, mobile phones, the internet, Google?
Yeah.
It is really getting beyond belief. They are desperate to get the angst up in the Middle East. And if you've got time, I would recommend that you go to the Daily Mail site and actually hear for yourself President Obama making these astonishing claims. And the only thing these people understand is violence. The only thing being dished out at the moment by the USA, of course, assisted by the British government, whether it's Labour or Conservative, is more violence. So terrorism is the in thing, and now apparently we're going to get schools to assist.
Exactly. Buckingham County Council and Tower Hamlets have written to schools in their borough asking teachers to inform police about students with suspected Islamic extreme connections. The letter, entitled Advice on Raised Terrorist Threat Level, reads as follows. If you have any concerns, especially with regards to young people, over their friends or family members being persuaded to participate in the conflict in Syria and Iraq, or commit acts of terrorism here, please take the opportunity to talk to the police officers you can see on patrol in your local community. Also in the letters, teachers are asked to call the police if they see suspicious behaviour going on, bags or vehicles. Now, school kids, 13 to 16, suspicious behaviour? So are these the new terror threat in this country?
I think this is very clever stuff, Louise. This is all about making people fearful of other people. You're going to make teachers now fearful of their own students. And of course, what does every young school child, or certainly teenagers or students, what do they carry around with them? Bags, because they've got their books and coats and sandwiches and mobile phone. So we're now going to have teachers in the Midlands. Do I report that? Should I report that? What if I don't report it? It's fear, fear.
Well, it's not even Midlands. I mean, it's Buckinghamshire and London mainly. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on up in the Midlands around that area.
Well, this is very interesting. I didn't pick that up first time round. So now we could say, how is it that the terrorist threat has suddenly moved away to Buckingham? Isn't this part of sort of established England?
So. Exactly.
Well, okay. Hopefully the teachers will be watching out for those explosive sandwiches and anything else that the youngsters have got in their bags. Better not mention my days and what was being built in the school grounds on a number of occasions, but there we are.
Okay.
And what aren't the police doing?
Okay, well, according to The Independent, over 800,000 offences are left off the official crime figures each year. And an investigation has found that 1 in 5 offences reported police were not listed, and 1/5 of rapes reported were marked down as a no crime. Theresa May has said it confirms her concern that there have been utterly unacceptable failings in the way police forces have recorded crimes. So, Mrs May, what are you going to do about it? Because this is your job. You're in charge of all this. What are you going to do about it?
I don't believe she's in charge, Louise. I think we got the real clue, if I may say
Go on,
so.
then.
I think we got the real clue with the so-called child abuse investigation that Theresa May was scrabbling around trying to get somebody. I believe she was trying to get somebody, but of course she had to work with the people the establishment give her.
But she is the figure put out there in charge of this country's security and looking into the police, etc.
That's true.
So she should be made accountable for this.
Well, I think you're right, but I'm just gently pointing out that is she really in control? No, she's not, because she's the puppet on the end of the string. So you're not going to see Theresa May achieve anything. Who's running her? The corporations, and of course come back to police policy via ACPO, which is itself a private company.
Yeah,
so
I do.
I'm going to say this is the City of London pulling Theresa May's strings. No, she's not going to do anything. But hopefully she will do something about flu.
Okay, so the hype over Ebola we thought had calmed down, but in another story shortly, maybe it hasn't. Liz Truss, the Environment Secretary, confirmed that a duck farm in East Yorkshire had broken out, had taken emergency measures because of a breakout with the H5 strain of the bird flu. H5N8 has also been found in the Levens. Apparently, neither outbreak is involved with the H5N1 version. The European Commission say that measures such as culling of poultry, surveillance zones are being set up, and stopping movements to transport live poultry is in place. Experts are now warning that there may be more cases of bird flu emerging in the next coming days. So watch out for the big fear going on. But we move on to the next story. Go on, comment.
Isn't it interesting that we have this wonderful name, H5N8, H5N1?
Yeah.
It all is, in my opinion, put out to give a feeling that there's a classification. This has been meticulously researched. We know exactly what this virus is. We've got these different strains. And the joke we've used before is that SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, where severe and acute mean the same thing in medical terms, is really ARS, acute respiratory syndrome. So I think we've got a bit of that going on here.
I think so, yeah. And it's just another push for vaccines. Well, after seeing that article in The Telegraph, I found an article in the Mail reporting that a 19-year-old Egyptian woman had died from H5N1 strain after coming into contact with infected poultry. Egypt has apparently identified 7 cases, and 2 people have died within those 7 cases as well. So I think we're going to see a big vaccine push coming on very soon.
Yeah, so one sad, somebody has died in Egypt, so that's sad, but this instantly comes straight across as massive news in UK that one person, I'm not sure what the population of Egypt is, multi-million, one person dies, and wham, that's suddenly in as headline news in UK. Fear,
yeah. Okay, so a walk-in GP centre at an Asda store in Hereford was sealed off yesterday when a person with a history of visiting West Africa walked into the surgery with suspected infectious disease. Apparently Ebola is considered very unlikely, but testing is being done as a precaution. So you look at the headline, if we can put that. Oh, it's still up there. Yeah, Ebola, Hereford, the fear, and then you read through the article, and it's very unlikely that it is.
It's anything at all.
Yeah, anything to put the fear into us.
But what we have been told is of people being in their local supermarket and then hearing an announcement, if you haven't had your flu jab, you can get it here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it might have been Waitrose, but I'll check on which of the supermarkets it was. But this is where we're getting to now, that you walk into your supermarket and you are going to be encouraged to come forward for a vaccination. So it's pretty sensible that we're now mixing food supplies with people who might be very infectious. I've got a touch of flu, So I'm going to go in and infect everybody in the supermarket and get my sausages and some explosive sandwiches for the children. And madness,
Crazy.
utter madness.
Okay, so terrorism. The Global Terrorism Index has reported 18,000 deaths have been caused by ISIS, Boko Haram, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, which is up 60%. And here we go. This is since the war on terror began under the guise of 9/11. And here we have in The Guardian a little bar chart indexing how terrorism figures have suddenly climbed since the war on terror began in Afghanistan.
So if we asked, unfortunately I haven't got my calculator here, but if we worked out, what is it, 16,000 people as a percentage? 18,000 as a percentage of the global population, and this is what we're worried about compared to, say, road accidents or...
Exactly. But it's the fact that it's up 60% since Bush and Blair started the whole war on terror. Yeah. It's pretty incredible.
So if Nick was here today, he would have probably put up a cynicism alert for the UK column today. And I have to say it's particularly high as we work through the news. Well, there isn't a lot. No. There's a lot of hype and trash, some of which we're going to highlight on today's news programme. But everything is becoming more obvious. It is so blatant. Yeah. It is so pathetic. So we've got the whole world running around putting troops in every country because 16,000 people, tragic though that is, but 18,000 people have died. Well, David Cameron, of course, our King Cameron, as he's known, has been waxing lyrical and saying that don't worry, everything is coming back online. He's been at a very glittery charity event. Britain is back. Well, what's Mr. Cameron been saying? Well, he said Britain is back. This kingdom, yes, this United Kingdom, I'm pleased to say, is back. And he then went on to say that the country has got a dramatic turnaround from economic crisis to accelerating recovery. And he did this in a speech at, as the Express says, a glittering annual dinner for Norwood, a social welfare charity. Well, we'll come on to that charity in a minute. But those were Cameron's words, a dramatic turnaround from economic crisis to accelerating recovery. So with a bit of help from Mike Robinson, we just had a little look at the British Chamber of Commerce, and on its front page, quarterly economic survey, no time to waste as export and manufacturing growth slows. So we did phone up the British Chamber of Commerce to say, well, can you tell us how Prime Minister, our King Cameron, could get so confused over the difference between a recession and accelerating growth? Unfortunately, we didn't have time to speak to their expert. They were very helpful, I must say, but we didn't have time to finish the conversation. So we're still a little bit puzzled as to how David Cameron could be so confused. But we get a little bit of a clue from this article because the Norwood social event put David Cameron alongside Simon Cowell, of course, well known for his economic skills and expertise, and also the Express's very own owner, Richard Desmond. So circled there, Cowell on the left as you see it and Desmond on the right. Well, let's remember about the sort of company that would bring David Cameron alongside. Because we don't have to go too far, but we start to see reports here from the BBC back in 2004, pointing out, of course, that Richard Desmond was associated with pornography, and his attempt to move into the porn field in America had brought him in close proximity to American mafia people who threatened one of his staff pretty badly. So not just the BBC, The Guardian here, mafia told Desmond, we'll kill you over porn deal. And this was an out-and-out sex industry turf war. So the man that David Cameron is happy to stand alongside is the very same Richard Desmond. And if you want to get into some of the mucky detail of this type of industry, this is a book called The Industrial Vagina. And it's got quite a lot of detailed text talking about the pornography industry and the success of Richard Desmond getting into that industry. Also points out that he tried to take over other newspapers at one stage. But of course, he was very happy to be donating several £100,000 to New Labour. So you don't have to get too far into it to see that, of course, British politicians are totally lacking in moral values, and they don't mind who they mix with if they can get a bit of glitter.
And money.
And money. So UK column advice to David, our King Cameron, is you need to brush up on your economics a little bit, David, because you got that wrong. And probably Simon Cowell isn't the best person to be taking advice from. But of course, Mr. Cowell is very pleased with himself. I believe a new baby on the way. But the Express here, another glowing article on Simon, saying that maybe he's gone a little bit soft. Now he's in danger of becoming a daddy. So
you're a bit late. He is a father.
Oh, he is.
He's
it's
already a
happened.
father. Yes.
Well, you can understand that I don't actually pay any attention to this stuff
That does
myself,
surprise me.
But I notice that you are well clued on this, Louise. Yeah, well, there we are. We're laughing about it, but just remember, we're talking about the British Prime Minister freely mixing with these people, clearly because he thinks they're important and he gains status back from G20 straight in alongside Simon Cowell. Well, what sort of event was the Norwood event? Just go and have a look at the charity, their website. Here we are. This is part of the page. Of course, a lot of it is very laudable because they are helping disabled children. So go and have a read of this yourself. And in the vision and values, they tell you quite a bit about the charity, how long it's been running, and the fact that they're working to help transform Britain and transform the lives of these very disabled children. So encourage you to go and have a look at that. Well, in the meantime, what sort of challenge have we got to Conservatives and Labour and what's left of the Lib Dems? And that's got to come surely from UKIP. So the Telegraph here with a very interesting article, a few little hidden daggers in it, but it's essentially saying that UKIP is picking up from people who've just simply had enough, and they are starting to get to the point where they're prepared to complain. So it says many of those who will vote UKIP this week still hanker after a world that is not coming back. This is part of the dagger, taking the mickey out of UKIP supporters. And then it praises the BBC. The BBC Parliament channel gave us a fascinating reminder of that period last week when it took advantage of a brief recess at Westminster to broadcast the corporation's live coverage of the October 15th, 1964 general election result. And it said it was a nostalgic journey to a world that looked both familiar and unfathomably distant. So basically they're pointing out the huge change in Britain. It goes on, it praises the experts, Robin Day, Cliff Mickelmore, David Butler, Robert Mackenzie and Richard Dimbleby, all very trustworthy people, I don't think. And it then refers to a very interesting book, The Diversity Illusion by a gentleman called Ed West. And if you follow that through, he says, just as globalism has, despite tremendous benefits, left many people around the world de-skilled and disenfranchised, so too is the policy of globalism in one country. So he is getting into the heart of this, that basically we are seeing Britain has been changed as a nation. Who agreed to those changes? And now we've got the fact that we're bringing in one world government, globalisation. Surprise, surprise, we've got people unemployed. They can't feed themselves. So it's a very interesting article. You could say it's a sneer at UKIP, but on the other hand, they're picking up that there's substance for the fact that more and more mainstream Labour and Conservatives are voting UKIP.
But They're praising the BBC, which I just think is incredible. I mean, they might as well have listed Jimmy Savile there when they're listing all the people at the BBC, really.
Well, I think you're going to score a 9 out of 10 on cynicism there, Louise. Absolutely right. And if you didn't pick it up on the little banner headline from a few slides ago, of course, Russia Today is now Russia Today, operating Russia Today UK. So if you want to look at a different approach to international and UK news, you might like to visit Russia Today. Well, we're going to stick on UKIP because some very interesting stuff happening around this man. Well, nice pose with what is supposed to be a real gun. This is UKIP's new secret weapon, a gentleman called Rahim Kassam. And apparently he's been hired by Nigel Farage in order to help UKIP win as many seats as possible. So apparently this gentleman has been trained in the arts of vicious American-style attack politics. And of course, he's been appointed just as it looks as though Mark Reckless is set to win another seat. I'm just going to point out here, it should come up on screen. Yeah, there is actually a spelling mistake in the Mail Online headline there.
I can't see my eyes.
It should say appointment comes, and it actually says appointment sums. So UK column would just like to say it's not only us that makes the occasional slip. But a little picture come up in the corner of your screen there, which is about the electioneering by UKIP at the moment. But this is what David Cameron had to say. He said that any win for UKIP would cause economic instability, excuse me, because it reduced the chances of a Tory general election win. And he urged voters not to give Mr Farage cause to have another celebratory point. If they vote UKIP, it'll be another sort of notch for them, the Prime Minister said, at the G20 summit in Brisbane. They will celebrate with a pint in the pub, and there'll be a greater danger of insecurity and instability in our economy. This man is clearly off his head. David Cameron is clearly off his head. He's talking about people, of course, as though they're the peasants, if they do this. And then he's talking to G20 about instability in Britain when he has dragged Britain into these overseas conflicts. We can't even feed people. It's nothing to do with UKIP. That's to do with you, Mr Cameron.
And the pay rises.
And the pay rises. If I just add a bit to that, Mike, if you can pop that back on screen. This was interesting, though, that when asked to comment yesterday on the gun pose and explain the circumstances, a UKIP spokesman said, "We all think he makes a rather dashing James Bond." What? So if that's true, this is an utterly pathetic response from the leadership of UKIP about this man, Mr Kassam. We're going to say, who is he? We're going to have a look at him in a second. But let's just think about David Cameron. Just Google Cameron and pint of beer, and you will come up with picture after picture of Cameron quaffing the pints of beer. And there doesn't seem any problem with austerity measures in the Cameron Beer Fund. Remarkable. I reckon Cameron's worried if he's had to mention UKIP while he's away with the G20.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
good point.
So let's have a look at UKIP's James Bond. Here he is, Mr Kassam, and proudly posed with a gun there. Well, what's he connected with? Well, The Guardian here has reported that he's been connected with Breitbart. So we've got a new media outlet that's popped up. This man's in the middle of it. You can read that Guardian article. We could go in a different direction because he's been a big reporter with the Jewish Chronicle. He's supposed to be a Muslim. I find that very interesting. Whether he is or not, I don't know. But certainly he's been given good coverage with the Jewish Chronicle there. He's mentioned here with Media Intelligence Partners, and they start to give a bit more information on him. He's had a website called Trending Central. He's written on all sorts of things, but he's good on Islam, he's good on Osama bin Laden, he's good on terrorism. They mentioned the Henry Jackson Society. That should give people cause for alarm. But he's also used by the BBC, so he's got to be an establishment man. Channel 4, Al Jazeera, US politics, terrorism, extremism, Middle East, radicalisation, and he pops out of nowhere to join the UKIP team. Well, it gets better, really, because he's also been a big wheel with Conservative Home. So just the sort of man you'd think that UKIP leadership wouldn't trust, but we understand that he's been offered £80,000 a year by UKIP leadership to fulfil this role. So that's all the mainstream UKIP members and donators paying this man's salary. And what's he been doing in the past? Well, he's clearly been helping the Tories. Here's the meat of it. If we bring it in, we've got the Henry Jackson Society. And what does it tell us about Mr. Rahim? Well, he's a counter-extremist campaigner. He's an expert on British and American politics. He's the director of Student Rights, which monitors extremism on UK campuses.
How old is this guy?
Oh, well, he's
another one who's done amazing jobs in a very short time.
I think he must be at least 150 if you look
minimum.
at his CV. But presumably he's going to be monitoring the sandwiches in those children's
in the
rucksacks.
lunch boxes, yeah.
He's written for Wall Street Journal, Conservative Home, The Commentator. He's been on the BBC, Al Jazeera. Also, the Bow Group now gets a mention. He's been the chairman for the Bow Group, Transatlantic and Homeland Security Policy Group.
Wow.
So this is a mystery man, because if you try and find his actual CV, you find there's nothing of substance. You can't really find who he is. You can't really find who he's been working for. But this young man, as you say, he's 17, 18. Now, I'm only joking. He's very young, but apparently he's done everything. So this is the trending central site. You'll also find some links to him have now been taken down. But if we bring in the Bow Group, interestingly enough, they put a picture of Nigel Farage and Cameron on the same page, and highlighted, ringed at the bottom of the page. They did a conference, and the moderator just happened to be Mr. Razim himself. So we're going to say, who is he? And what is the actual connection between Raheem Kassam and Nigel Farage?
Interesting.
But do I get a warm feeling about this man? I don't. I think he's professional globalist. I think he has been involved in some of these rather strange counter-terrorism, counter-extremism groups. Is he paid? I'm going to say, is he international security? Who runs him? Is he a Muslim?
And how long has he been? Where was he educated? Where did he go to school? How long has he been in all of these posts? So the CV is incredible from all the lists of all the companies you've just shown that he's involved in, the things he's involved in. And I'd say he's still in his 20s somewhere, I'd say. Well,
possibly early 30s.
Maybe.
We'll have a look at that. But this one has been flagged up to us. We thought it was extremely interesting. It's obvious that there are people in UKIP who are deeply concerned to see this man appear on the scene. And we're going to do what we often do, is to say to our viewers and listeners, can you help us? Who is this man? Who is he really working for? And what do you think his role is within the UKIP camp? I mean, works for the Tories 1 minute, hops across, he's now going to work with UKIP? Or is he working for the Henry Jackson Society?
Or all of them.
Or all of them. Okay.
Right, go on then.
Well, I was just going to say Cameron's got money for beer, but of course he doesn't have any money for the NHS.
No, well, here the Mirror are giving a list of 71 MPs with links to private healthcare firms. This is showing even more evidence that the NHS is being sold off to private firms. Now, I've just taken a few from the list of the 71, and if we want to bring them up. Okay, so first of all, we have our dear leader, David Cameron. He gave a peerage to nursing home tycoon Dollar Popat of Ageing Care. And next, we have Tory whip Harriet Baldwin, and she was an executive of JP Morgan, who also have a lot of money invested within the healthcare.
So independent, these are all independent people.
Yep. Then we have Andrew Lansley, who's the former Health Secretary and the so-called architect of privatisation. He received a £21,000 donation from John Nash, who is the former head of Care UK. And
I think this was a little bit below the belt, this one.
Sorry, I had to put that picture up. Brooks Newmarket. Now, this is interesting. It claims that he is a partner in the Allel Fund, which, when I looked into it, was actually founded by none other than Cherie Blair. But you go onto the Allel Fund website and you have a picture of Cherie Blair there and other founders and executives. But there is no mention of Brooks Newmarket, but there have been articles and publications where Brooks Newmarket is constantly linked to this group. So whether he didn't want his face on the website, I don't know, but he has links to this healthcare file.
I wonder whether he's been particularly interested in skincare products, because he's clearly there in front of the mirror checking his body out. Yep, welcome to Britain's politicians. And who's this other one here?
And here we have our very own Health Minister, Jeremy Hunt, who cashed in with a donation of £32,920 from a hedge fund baron, Andrew Law, who is a major investor in healthcare firms. So they're all there. There's a list of 71. Take a look for yourself. And
which paper was that?
It was in the Mirror.
In the Mirror.
Yeah.
We're going to say,
good work.
Well done, Daily Mirror, because this is really getting some of the truth to the fore. Of course, is it the job of a lot of the mainstream papers now to utterly collapse public confidence in our politicians? I think a large part of it is that. Collapse Britain into chaos, because then, of course, we can be totally controlled. But that's probably a 6 on the cynicism scale.
Okay, so this could actually have a link to this article here. Sky News have done an investigation into the NHS, and they have found that thousands of patients who no longer need care are remaining in hospital as no care is available to them at home. The NHS is apparently wasting over £34 million a month looking after patients who do not need to be in hospital, and is being blamed on social care funding, which has dropped significantly apparently since the coalition came into power. So I wonder why it has stopped. Is it because the funding's going to the actual firms directly rather than the local health authorities? Yeah. Politicians have got an awful, well, it's just proven in the Mirror, they've got interest within these private healthcare firms. So the local borough can't do it. They haven't got the funding to get people out of the ward. So let's hand all the home care and the caring side over to these private firms. Well,
that's clearly happening,
yeah.
Louise, so I think you're spot on with that. The other thing that's happening, of course, is you've got these NHS Foundation trusts appearing everywhere, who are in partnership with other organisations. So when you talk about the NHS, what are you really talking about? It's difficult to get a grip of what it is, because the money is then frittered out, little parcels to this bit, to that bit, and the money disappears. This is how all of the fraud and corruption happened over the government funding, like New Deal for Communities, for example.
Yeah, well, the local authorities' budget's apparently been slashed by £3.5 billion, according to that Sky News report.
Yeah. Well, we know where it's going, privatisation of the NHS, because David King Cameron and the Tories have lied, just as New Labour and the Lib Dems have lied over that subject. If you're in the public sector and beginning to get annoyed with these people, what we really need is good, peaceful protest. And remarkable that, of course, the BBC hasn't been talking anything about this sort of demonstration, which you can find on YouTube. This, from a few days ago, were people out on the streets in Dublin complaining about a whole range of measures that the Irish government are bringing in. But amongst other things, of course, they were talking about the water charges and metering. And some stills from the video. Encourage you to go and have a look at it, because there were a lot of people there. At some points they're singing. This is a view along the river, and that's several hundred yards of people, so this is not a few tens of people out on the streets peacefully demonstrating, but having a real impact. And I'd just like to give a big thanks to Jim Core, who's in another video here, giving a message to the people of Ireland and saying to them, come on, it's time that you got off your bottoms and got out and started to protest properly. And of course, this is lawful, peaceful protest, very powerful. On a couple of occasions, I think there were people attempting to cause trouble in some of these events, but they were quickly brought to book by the other people there. So we're going to say well done to everybody who appeared on the streets there, but also Jim Core for being brave enough to stand up and talk about what's really happening. And I do know that, of course, Jim, in the early days when he started to speak out, was put under pressure via all the people who normally do that, friends, family, but also his particular industry suggested you don't want to be talking anything political.
He did a tour with Ian Crane, didn't he?
He did,
Yep,
yeah.
a few years back.
Well, where does it end unless we all take some steps? This happens to be America, but I also encourage you to go and have a look at this. It was a little video called Confronting Riot Cops in Tampa. What I found fascinating was the dress of these police. On one hand, you know, we can see plenty of black-dressed police in all this sorts of gear, but with the white vests that they had on, they looked like something out of a Star Wars film. And personally, I think this is part of it, selling transhumanism to people.
Yeah, definitely.
This is where it's going to go, and as the person who made the video showed very clearly, when ordinary, reasonable people were attempting to have a conversation, these guys didn't have a brain left. No. They were brain-dead robots.
Robocops.
That's what I was really looking for. Thank you for that. Meanwhile, of course, back here in Britain, our police still can't get to grips with child abuse. So over the weekend, we've had these very emotive headlines that now they're investigating the murder of children connected with Elm Guesthouse in London. They're saying this as though it's something new, but we know that the police have actually had the video evidence of witnesses talking about the murders and torture of children for well over a year. So this is a scam by the police because, of course, they've sat on a lot of this evidence. But what does seem to be happening is that there's so much coming out, they've got to do something about it. If you picked it up on the slide, I just also there mentioned, that we're asking when Nottinghamshire police are going to start to do their full and proper investigation of the reports of child murders at Beechwood Children's Home, because a brief conversation with Nottinghamshire police last week told us, well, they have a policeman or woman on the case of Beechwood when there's nothing more important for them to do. So sometimes they're out on the streets directing the traffic, and if they're not too busy, then they come back into the office.
They may be called to a school to go through someone's lunchbox.
Yeah, but you don't want to get into what really went on at Beechwood. Why not? Because it's real. The children were abused, and according to victims themselves, children were suicided, that's the term used, and murdered, but Nottinghamshire police don't want to investigate. I wonder why not. But some very good news. If we're talking Nottinghamshire, we've got to mention Melanie Shaw. And I'm going to say that the generosity from our viewers and listeners has been astonishing, because as of today, £1,075 has been donated to Melanie. I can say that she is extremely emotional at the moment because she says that she has never been treated this way by anybody in her life before. So while she's suffering under the hate is the right description of the British establishment and local authority and Nottinghamshire police and the courts, she has been overwhelmed at your generosity. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And the remaining postal orders will be on their way to Melanie later today. Now, this is pretty sick, and we're going to show it because for the UK column, it gives us an insight into the attack by the mainstream press and media on people's minds. So the Daily Mail has got an article. It gives you a warning about the article that people might find the pictures disturbing. But we're being led to believe that some university professors have been monitoring strange sexual behaviour between animals, in this case seals and penguins. So we've got seals attempting to have sex with penguins. This is what we're being told. But actually the seals are then eating the penguins. So seals, mean bite when they're going to do it. But what is this article about? Because the pictures are disturbing. We get a warning with the article. It's talking about something perverse, something very dark. I believe this is the sort of article that's put out in order to mess around with people's minds.
I wonder, did this have any link to this? Apparently, you know, there's a John Lewis TV advert. I don't know because I haven't seen it, but every year they do a very emotional kind of sweet advert coming up to Christmas, and this year they're using penguins, and all of a sudden in a lot of the papers, I haven't gone out through the stories with regards to penguins, but
Right.
there have been an awful lot of articles with relation to penguins, and a lot of it's come off the back of this John Lewis advert, which has apparently penguins in.
Right, that's very interesting. I was in Winchester yesterday and I was looking in a shop window. I can't remember which shop it is. I need to see my own photos. But what I was intrigued at was young girls, 12 at the most, clearly made up as models, and they were there to sell the clothes and shoes in the window. This is a poster,
Oh, right, okay,
not a
okay.
real girl. And the other one were of young children with the heads of animals. And I think this again is leading us towards mutation and transhumanism.
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm sorry to throw that at viewers today at the end of the programme, but as we're constantly trying to say, do read the mainstream news because there is a lot of factual information there, but be also aware of the fact that these people are clearly trying to mess around with our heads.
Yeah, can I just jump in? I didn't add the slide. I don't know why it's not there, but
My
according
fault,
to
probably.
according to the Mail, Tony Blair apparently has seen letters containing the conclusion of the Chilcot inquiry. Blair and Jack Straw are among other officials to have received letters because of criticism made of them by Sir John Chilcot. So if you just go and have a little look and Chilcot inquiry, Google it or whatever, you will see that Blair has received the Chilcot report. So there are rumours that it is going to be coming out within the next few months.
Well,
We'll have to wait
presumably
and see.
after it's been modified so that the people it's been sent to are happy with it.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Why should Tony Blair get a copy in advance of the public who he served?
Well, guess what? It's already cost £11 million, and Tony Blair and others are looking to put in their legal costs to be paid by the British people, taxpayer as well.
Right. Okay.
There you go.
We'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back same time tomorrow.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.